Three small creatures huddled together in the corner of a metal cage. Their scales were pure white, so pale they almost glowed under the harsh station lights. They pressed against each other for warmth and comfort, their red eyes darting nervously at every sound. Around them, the breeding facility bustled with activity, but no one came near their isolated corner. The Scareen species ruled trade and military contracts across 12 star systems. Their reputation for strength and tactical brilliance made them sought after as soldiers, guards, and commanders. Every year, the orbital station above their homeworld Theros produced hundreds of hatchlings. Families from across the galaxy paid enormous sums to adopt these future warriors. But not these three. The female handler who brought their daily rations never looked at them directly. She slid the food tray through a slot and walked away quickly, as if their condition might be contagious. The albino hatchlings had learned not to cry out or beg for attention. It only made the handlers move faster. In the main nursery hall, their clutchmates wrestled and played under careful supervision. Those hatchlings had proper green and brown scales that gleamed healthily. Potential parents visited daily, evaluating the young Scareen for intelligence, aggression, and physical perfection. The albinos could hear the sounds of happy chirping and approving clicks from adult Scareen examining the normal babies. Nobody wanted to examine them. The oldest albino, a male with a scar across his snout from fighting his own reflection, watched the door constantly. He had given up hope weeks ago, but still could not stop looking. His younger brother paced in, circles, wearing a path in the thin bedding they had been given. The sister sat motionless, conserving energy, her brilliant mind already understanding their situation better than her brothers did. Hatchery Master Vrel stopped by their cage once every few days. He was a massive Scareen, nearly 8 feet tall, with deep emerald scales and ceremonial scars marking his ranks. He would stare at the albinos with his golden eyes and shake his head slowly. To him, they represented a failure of genetics, a blemish on his facility's perfect record. Defects, he muttered during his last visit. 30 days. If no sponsor claims them, we proceed with disposal. It is the merciful choice. The albinos understood enough Scareen standard language to know what disposal meant. They pressed closer together that night, the youngest male whimpering softly until his sister nipped his ear to make him stop. Showing weakness only made things worse. Days blended together in their small cage. They received nutrition paste twice daily and water that tasted of recycled metal. Once a week, a medical drone scanned them through the bars to ensure they were not developing diseases that might spread to valuable hatchlings. The drone never entered their cage. Everything about their existence screamed contamination and worthlessness. Other species visited the breeding facility too. Wealthy humans, curious Bellari merchants, even a delegation of crystalline lumens floated through the main halls. They all paused to admire the strong Scareen youngsters. Some pointed at the albinos in their isolated corner and asked questions. The handlers always gave the same explanation: genetic defects, unsuitable for placement, scheduled for removal. Most visitors nodded and moved on. A few seemed sad but did not argue. After all, who were they to question Scareen tradition? The albinos developed their own language of tail movements and eye blinks. They stopped trying to communicate with handlers who ignored them anyway. The oldest brother took first watch at night, alert for any sign of the disposal team. The younger brother organized their small space obsessively, arranging and rearranging their single worn blanket. The sister spent hours studying the facility, through gaps in their enclosure, memorizing patrol patterns and shift changes. They were intelligent, perhaps more so than their normal siblings, but intelligence meant little when prejudice ran so deep. On the 23rd day of their countdown to disposal, something changed. A ship docked at the station's main port. The albinos paid it no attention at first. Ships came and went constantly. But this vessel was different. It carried humans, and humans always moved differently than other species. They were curious about everything, touching surfaces other beings ignored, asking questions that seemed pointless to more advanced races. One human in particular wandered farther from the tour group than she should have. She was small even by human standards, with brown skin and long dark hair pulled back in a simple tie. Her clothing marked her as young, not yet an adult by human measures. She held a small recording device and seemed fascinated by every detail of the breeding facility. The handlers were busy with the tour group in the main nursery. No one noticed when the girl slipped down a side corridor, following signs written in multiple languages. She was reading about scarine development stages when she turned a corner and found herself in the isolation wing. The albino hatchlings saw her before she saw them. The sister chirped a warning, and all three scrambled to the back of their cage, making themselves as small as possible. Humans were rare visitors but still represented the same threat as anyone else: disappointment and rejection. But this human did not walk past. She stopped directly in front of their enclosure, and her eyes went wide. For a long moment, girl and hatchling stared at each other across the barrier. The albinos waited for the familiar look of disgust or pity. Instead, the human smiled. It was a genuine expression, not the forced politeness they sometimes glimpsed from handlers. She crouched down to their level, making herself smaller and less threatening. "Hello there," she said softly in human standard language. "Why are you all alone back here?" The albinos did not understand her words, but they understood her tone. It carried no rejection, no contempt, just curiosity and something else they had never encountered before: kindness. The girl pressed her hand against the transparent barrier. The sister, driven by an instinct she did not fully understand, slowly reached out one small claw and touched the barrier from her side, matching the human's gesture. Behind them, angry voices called out. The handlers had noticed their missing tour guest. The girl stood up quickly, but before she left, she looked back at the three albinos one more time. "I will come back," she whispered, though they could not understand. "I promise." For the first time since hatching, the three albinos felt something other than fear and despair. They did not have a word for it yet, but humans called it hope. Lily Brooks returned to the isolation wing the next morning, carrying a bag of supplies from the human ship. She had barely slept, her mind spinning with thoughts of the three white hatchlings locked away in that cold cage. Her parents were attending meetings with station officials, and she had 2 hours before anyone would miss her. The albinos scrambled to the front of their enclosure when they saw her approaching. Their red eyes tracked her movements with desperate intensity. Lily knelt down and slowly unpacked her bag. A blanket, some dried fruit from the ship's stores, and several children's picture books she had loved when she was younger. She pushed the blanket through the narrow feeding slot. The sisters sniffed it carefully before dragging it to their sleeping corner. The fabric was soft and clean, nothing like the rough material they had been given. All three hatchlings immediately curled up on it, their tails intertwining. Lily opened the first book and held it against the transparent barrier so they could see the pictures. She read slowly, pointing to each image. A dog playing in a yard, children laughing together, a family eating dinner. The hatchlings watched with complete focus, their heads tilting at the colorful drawings. Over the following days, Lily established a routine. She would sneak away from the human delegation's scheduled activities and spend every free moment with the albinos. She brought them better food, though she had to be careful not to alert the handlers. She drew pictures in a notebook and showed them simple words in both English and Scarine Standard. The hatchlings proved remarkably quick learners. Within a week, they understood basic commands: sit, come, stay. Lily began assigning them names based on their white coloring. The older, cautious brother became Ash. The energetic younger brother was Frost. The observant sister was Snow. When Lily spoke their names, the hatchlings responded with excited chirps. They had never been given individual names before, only a designation number for the facility's records. Having names meant they were individuals, not just defective inventory. Hatchery Master Vrel discovered Lily during her second week of visits. He strode into the isolation wing with 2 handlers flanking him, his massive form blocking the light. "Human child," he rumbled in accented English. "You waste your time with genetic failures. These creatures are scheduled for disposal in 8 days. Lily stood up and met his gaze without flinching. "Why? What did they do wrong?" Vrel's scales rippled with annoyance. "They are albino, weak, unsuitable for any proper Scarine family. It is merciful to end their suffering before they burden anyone." "They don't look like they're suffering," Lily said, gesturing to the 3 hatchlings who were now playing gently with a toy she had brought. "They look smart and healthy." You understand nothing of our culture, Vrel said coldly. But I will allow these visits to continue. Let it be known that even rejects are too worthless for human pity. He turned and left, his tail scraping the floor. But his words gave Lily an idea. If she could prove that the albinos had value, if she could show they were not defective at all, perhaps she could save them. She started recording her sessions with them, documenting how quickly they learned, how they solved simple puzzles she created, how they cooperated with each other to overcome challenges. The hatchlings began to trust her completely. Frost would press against the barrier when she arrived, making happy clicking sounds. Ash watched over his siblings but gradually relaxed in her presence. Snow would bring Lily small gifts through the feeding slot, pebbles and scraps of shiny material she found in the cage. Lily taught them more English words: friend, safe, stay, together. She told them stories about Earth, about oceans and forests and cities full of different people living side by side. The hatchlings listened with rapt attention, their world expanding beyond the metal walls they had always known. By the third week, they could communicate in simple sentences using a mix of Scareen and English words plus gestures. Snow proved particularly gifted with language, stringing together complex ideas that surprised even Lily. "Why we different bad?" Snow asked one day, her small claws tapping the question mark pattern Lily had taught her. Lily struggled to explain prejudice to a child who had only ever experienced it, never understood it. "Different is not bad," she said firmly. "Different is just different. Some people fear what they do not understand, but that is their problem, not yours." The deadline crept closer. 5 days remained, then 4, then 3. Lily's parents noticed her distraction during meals and asked what was troubling her. She'd been afraid to tell them, worried they would forbid her visits or dismiss her concerns. But with time running out, she had no choice. That evening, she brought them to the isolation wing. Dr. Helen Brooks and Dr. Robert Brooks were xenobiologists who had studied dozens of species across their careers. They approached the albino hatchlings with professional curiosity that quickly turned to amazement. "These cognitive scores are remarkable," Helen murmured, running tests on her handheld scanner. "They're testing well above average for their age group." Robert was examining Snow's problem-solving abilities with a complex puzzle box. "The albinism has not affected their neural development at all. If anything, they may be slightly advanced compared to standard Scareen juveniles. Can we adopt them?" Lily asked, her voice shaking with hope. "Can we take them with us when we leave?" Her parents exchanged a long look. Helen spoke carefully. "Lily, the Scareen do not allow aliens to adopt their young. It is a fundamental law in their culture. Even these 3 marked for disposal are still considered Scareen property." "Then we have to change the law," Lily said stubbornly, "or find a way around it. We can't just let them die because of stupid prejudice." Robert put his hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We will try, but you need to understand the complications. These hatchlings will grow to be 8 feet tall and live for over a century. They require specialized diet and environment. Taking them is a commitment we may not be able to fulfill." "I don't care," Lily said. "They're my friends. Friends don't abandon each other." Her parents saw the determination in her eyes and recognized it. They had raised their daughter to value compassion and justice. How could they tell her to ignore those principles now? Helen scheduled a meeting with the station council for the following day. Robert began researching Scareen adoption law, looking for any precedent or loophole. Lily returned to the isolation wing and told the 3 hatchlings that help was coming. "Trust," she said, making the sign they had learned. "We will find a way." But trust was hard for creatures who had only known rejection. That night, the albinos huddled together on their soft blanket, trying to believe that maybe, just maybe, one human girl could change their fate. The council chamber smelled of incense and old stone, traditional elements the Scareen incorporated even into their space stations. 12 elders sat in a semicircle, their scales bearing the scars and markings of honor earned over decades. Helen and Robert Brooks stood before them with Lily between them, facing Hatchery Master Vrel, who presented the opposing argument. "The law is absolute," Vrel declared, his voice echoing in the chamber. "No alien species may claim ownership of Scareen offspring. These albinos, defective though they are, remain children of Theros. To release them to humans would dishonor our ancestors and corrupt our bloodlines." Helen stepped forward. "We propose not adoption but a cultural guardianship program. The hatchlings would remain registered as Scareen citizens. We would serve as their caretakers and educators, with regular reports submitted to your government. This creates precedent for cross-species collaboration without violating your core laws. The eldest council member, a female named Sora, with silver-tipped scales, clicked her teeth thoughtfully. An interesting proposal. But why should we trust humans with scurrying young, even defective ones? What qualifications does your family possess? Robert presented their credentials: decades of xenobiology research, successful interactions with juvenile members of 17 different species. But the council seemed unimpressed. Finally, Counselor Dren, a scarred warrior with half his tail missing, leaned forward. Words mean nothing. The girl claims to bond with these rejects. Let her prove it through our traditional trials. If she succeeds, we grant guardianship. If she fails, the disposal proceeds as scheduled, and this matter is closed forever. Lily felt her parents tense beside her, but she spoke before they could object. I accept. What are the trials? Vrel's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. 3 tests. Strength, to prove you can control them. Wisdom, to prove you understand scurrying thinking. Courage, to prove you will not abandon them when they show their true nature. You have 1 day to prepare. That evening, Lily visited the albinos and explained what was coming. Snow understood first, her red eyes widening with worry. Test dangerous? She asked in her improving English. Maybe, Lily admitted. But it is our only chance. Will you help me? The 3 hatchlings looked at each other, communicating in their silent way. Finally, Ash moved to the barrier and placed his claw against it. We help, you first, friend. We protect. The next morning, a crowd gathered in the facility's training arena. Word had spread about the human girl challenging scurrying tradition. Handlers, maintenance workers, even some visiting merchants came to watch. The betting pool strongly favored Lily's failure. The first trial began at noon. Lily entered a circular ring where Ash waited on the opposite side. Counselor Dren explained the rules. You must physically restrain the hatchling for 30 seconds. No weapons, no assistance. This proves you have the strength to prevent them from harming others. Lily approached Ash slowly. He was already larger than her, nearly 4 feet tall and heavily muscled despite his youth. The crowd murmured. This was clearly impossible. A human child could not overpower even a juvenile scurrying. But Lily and Ash had a plan. She came close and whispered, "Please help me save you." Ash understood. He lunged forward as if attacking, and Lily sidestepped, using his momentum to pull him off balance. They tumbled together, and Lily ended up on his back. Her arms wrapped around his neck in a restraining hold she had researched the night before. Ash could have thrown her off easily, but he went still, counting silently as Lily clung to him. The judges counted aloud. 20 seconds, 25, 30. A horn sounded. Vrel protested immediately. The creature allowed it. This proves nothing. But Counselor Sora raised her hand. It proves they can cooperate. That is its own form of strength. The first trial is passed. The second trial came an hour later. Lily was led to a room containing a massive holographic display, showing a complex military scenario. 12 scurrying warriors faced an enemy force with superior numbers and position. She had to devise a strategy for victory within 10 minutes. Lily stared at the display, her mind racing. She knew nothing about scurrying military tactics. The scenarios used weapons and terrain she did not recognize. Panic began to set in as minutes ticked away. Then she noticed Snow in the observation window, watching intently. The hatchling's tail moved in a specific pattern, a language Lily had learned over their weeks together. Snow was giving her hints, drawing invisible maps in the air with her tail tip. Lily followed the guidance. She identified a weak point in the enemy formation that looked insignificant, but was actually critical. She proposed a flanking maneuver that would use the terrain's natural cover. With 1 minute remaining, she submitted her strategy. The judges analyzed it in silence. Finally, Counselor Dren spoke. This strategy mirrors a classic scurrying tactic from the Battle of 3 Moons. It would succeed. How does a human child know our military history? Lily smiled but did not reveal Snow's help. I pay attention when people teach me, she said simply. The second trial was passed. Vrel's scales darkened with frustration, but he could not dispute the results. The final trial came at sunset. Lily was brought to a larger enclosure where all 3 albinos waited together. The rules were simple and terrifying. She would enter the pen with no protective gear and no barriers. If the hatchlings attacked her, If they showed any aggression, they would be destroyed immediately. Guards with shock weapons surrounded the pen. "This proves courage," Sora explained, "and proves whether your bond is real or imagined. Many creatures behave differently when rules no longer constrain them." Lily's hands shook as the door opened. Her parents tried to stop her, but the judges held them back. This was Lily's choice alone. She stepped into the enclosure and the door sealed behind her. The three albinos stood together on the far side, watching her. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Frost chirped softly and rushed forward. The guards tensed, weapons rising, but Frost only pressed his head against Lily's stomach, the scurrying gesture of affection and trust. Ash followed, moving to her left side protectively. Snow came last, circling them all with her tail in a protective loop. The four stood together in the center of the enclosure while the crowd watched in complete silence. Lily sat down on the floor, and the three hatchlings arranged themselves around her. She pulled out the storybook she had been reading to them and opened to their favorite page. In a clear voice, she began to read about a princess who befriended 3 dragons everyone else feared. She read for 5 minutes while the albinos listened peacefully, occasionally making happy sounds. The guards slowly lowered their weapons. Even Vrel seemed unable to maintain his anger in the face of such obvious connection. When Lily finished the story, she stood up and walked to the door. The albinos followed her like shadows, stopping only when she turned to say goodbye. "Soon," she promised them. "We will be together soon." Counselor Sora stood and addressed the chamber. "The trials are complete. The human child has proven strength through cooperation, wisdom through learning, and courage through trust. I vote to grant cultural guardianship." One by one, the other counselors agreed. Even Dren, though reluctantly, acknowledged that Lily had met the requirements. Only Vrel voted against, but he was outnumbered. "The albinos will be released to human custody," Sora declared. "But understand this. They will wear monitor bands until they reach adulthood. Any incident of violence, any failure in their development, and they will be recalled and disposed of immediately." "This is not mercy. This is probation," Lily nodded, accepting the terms. She did not care about conditions or restrictions. Her friends were saved. That was all that mattered. That night, the albinos were moved from their isolation cage to a temporary holding area near the human ship. Lily brought them real food and more blankets, and they celebrated together. They did not understand everything about their future, but they understood one thing perfectly. They were wanted. Finally, after weeks of rejection, someone had chosen them. A small human girl with a big heart had looked at 3 broken creatures and seen family. The research vessel Wayfinder was designed to house a crew of 40 humans comfortably, with additional space for cargo and scientific equipment. It was not designed for 3 rapidly growing scurrying juveniles with sharp claws and heavy tails. Within the first week, they accidentally broke 2 chairs, cracked a wall panel, and shattered 3 water containers just by moving through the corridors. Lily worked to help them adjust, but the ship felt wrong to creatures built for open spaces and natural light. The albinos stayed cramped in the cargo bay area that had been converted into their quarters, surrounded by unfamiliar smells and constant humming from the engines. The crew divided into 2 camps. Some, like Dr. Helen Brooks and the head botanist Ruth, saw the albinos as Lily's friends and tried to make them welcome. They learned the hatchlings' names and brought them snacks from the galley. Ruth even started growing special plants that Skareen enjoyed eating, but others saw only danger. Engineering Chief Gordon Patterson led this group. He was a military veteran who had fought against Skareen raiders in his youth and carried deep distrust of the species. He argued loudly in crew meetings that 3 predators had no place on a civilian research vessel. "They're children," Helen countered during one heated discussion. "They're learning to adapt." "They're animals," Patterson shot back. "And animals follow instinct. Mark my words, someone will get hurt." The albinos knew they were not wanted by everyone. They could smell fear and hear the hostile whispers. Frost, the boldest of the 3, wanted to prove himself worthy. He started wandering the ship alone, trying to help with tasks despite lacking training. Snow focused on learning everything she could about humans. She watched educational videos, studied medical texts from the ship's database, and practiced speaking English until her pronunciation was nearly perfect. Ash stayed close to Lily, serving as her silent guardian whenever she moved through the ship. 6 months passed. The albinos grew rapidly, each reaching 5 feet in height and gaining muscle mass that made crew members nervous. Their monitor bands tracked their location and vital signs constantly, data streaming back to the Screen Council. Any aggressive spike in their heart rates or stress hormones would trigger an immediate investigation. Lily, now 16, spent every free hour teaching them about human culture and social rules. She showed them how to interpret facial expressions and tone of voice. She explained personal space and appropriate greetings. The albinos tried hard to follow every rule, desperate not to give anyone an excuse to send them back. But mistakes happened. Frost did not understand that humans valued privacy and walked into occupied bathrooms. Snow's questions during crew movie nights annoyed people who wanted to watch in silence. Ash's protective instincts made him growl softly when strangers approached Lily too quickly. The breaking point came during a routine maintenance shift. Lily was helping Patterson repair a coolant leak in the lower engineering deck. She reached for a tool on a high shelf, and Patterson, frustrated with her slow pace, stepped close behind her and raised his voice. "Move faster, girl. We don't have all day for your fumbling." He did not touch her, but his tone was harsh and his body language aggressive. Frost, who had been working quietly in the adjacent compartment, heard the shout and came running. He saw Lily pressed against the wall with Patterson looming over her. His juvenile mind processed the situation through a simple lens: friend in danger. Frost lunged forward and struck Patterson's arm with his claws, not hard enough to injure seriously, but enough to draw blood. Patterson shouted in pain and anger, and alarms immediately blared as Frost's monitor band registered aggressive action. Within minutes, security personnel arrived. Patterson demanded Frost be locked up or ejected from the ship. The albinos were confined to their quarters while the crew held an emergency meeting. Lily tried to explain that Frost was only protecting her, that Patterson had been threatening, but the facts were clear. A Scarian had attacked a human crew member. Robert Brooks, as the senior officer who had signed for guardianship, called everyone to the main conference room. Patterson sat with his bandaged arm, glaring at the closed door where the albinos waited. Other crew members whispered nervously. "We agreed to give them a chance," Robert began, "but this incident violates our agreement with the Screen Council." Frost's actions could be interpreted as violent assault. "He was protecting Lily," Helen argued. "Any creature would defend a friend from perceived danger." "I was not threatening her," Patterson snapped. "I was doing my job and that animal attacked me for no reason." Lily stood up, her voice shaking but determined. "Frost is still learning. He does not understand all our social signals yet. He made a mistake, but it was not malicious. Giving up on him now would be wrong." "This is not about right or wrong," Patterson said coldly. "This is about safety. Those creatures are too dangerous to keep aboard. They need to go back to the Screen or be dropped at the next station." The vote was close. 18 crew members voted to return the albinos to Screen custody. 15 voted to give them another chance. 7 abstained. Robert had the final decision as ship commander. He looked at his daughter, saw the tears in her eyes, and felt the weight of responsibility crushing him. If he kept the albinos and someone got seriously hurt, it would be his fault. But if he sent them back knowing they would be killed, how could he live with that choice? "We keep them," he said finally, "but with conditions. The albinos will undergo formal training in human behavior and social interaction. They will not roam the ship unsupervised until they pass competency tests. And if another incident occurs, there will be no second chances." Patterson stood up angrily and left the meeting. Several others followed him. The crew was now fractured, and Lily knew rebuilding trust would be nearly impossible. She went to the albinos' quarters and found all 3 huddled together, terrified. They had heard enough through the walls to understand they were in trouble. Frost pressed himself into the corner, his white scales dull with shame. "I'm sorry," he whispered in broken English. "I thought danger. I protect wrong." Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. "You protected right. Your heart was right. We just need to teach your head to understand better. Okay?" The ship's counselor, Dr. Willis, developed a comprehensive training program. Every day for 3 hours, the albinos studied human communication, cultural norms, and conflict resolution. They watched videos of human interactions and practiced appropriate responses. They learned about tone, context, and the difference between actual threats and simple disagreements. Ash proved to be gifted with mechanical work and was assigned to help with basic engineering tasks under supervision. Frost joined the security team for physical training, learning how to assess real dangers. Snow worked with Ruth in the hydroponics bay and studied medicine through the ship's educational network. Slowly, carefully, they found their place. Crew members who had been frightened began to see them as individuals rather than threats. The albinos learned which humans enjoyed their company and which preferred distance. They adapted their behavior to make others comfortable. Patterson never fully forgave Frost, but he stopped actively campaigning for their removal. An uneasy peace settled over the ship. The albinos wore their monitor bands without complaint and checked in with Robert every evening to report their activities. A year after leaving the Scarine station, Lily turned 17. The albinos were now equivalent to human teenagers, standing 6 feet tall and speaking fluent English. They still made mistakes, still struggled with concepts that came naturally to humans, but they tried harder than anyone else on the ship. On Lily's birthday, they used their small allowance from ship duties to buy her a gift from the last space station. It was a small crystal that refracted light into rainbow colors. Snow had chosen it because it reminded her of hope, something colorless becoming beautiful when viewed the right way. "We were nothing," Snow said, presenting the gift with careful ceremony. "You saw light inside. Thank you for looking." Lily hugged all three of them, no longer caring that their scales were rough or their bodies alien. They were her family in every way that mattered. And as the Wayfinder sailed deeper into unexplored space, she knew their story was just beginning. The real test would come when they faced a crisis together, when the crew would finally see what Lily had known from the start. The three rejected hatchlings were not broken at all. They were exactly who they were meant to be. 2 years after leaving the Scarine breeding station, the Wayfinder joined a convoy of research and transport vessels traveling through the disputed border zone between human and Gruul territories. The journey was considered safe enough, as both governments honored a fragile peace treaty. But space pirates and raiders cared little for diplomatic agreements. Lily was 17 now, helping her mother catalog plant samples in the laboratory. Ash, Frost, and Snow had grown into young adults, each standing nearly 7 feet tall with lean muscle and confident movements. They wore their monitor bands without complaint and had proven themselves valuable crew members. Ash assisted in engineering, Frost trained with security, and Snow studied medicine under Dr. Willis. The distress signal came during third shift when most of the crew slept. A colony ship carrying settlers to a new world had been attacked. Life support was failing. Hundreds of people were trapped, including families with children. The convoy's military escort was 3 hours away on patrol. The Wayfinder and 2 other civilian ships were closest, but they had minimal combat capability. Admiral Hayes, commanding the escort fleet, sent urgent orders. Assess the situation, but do not engage hostile forces. Robert Brooks assembled his senior crew in the conference room. The tactical display showed the damaged colony ship venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. Sensor scans detected Gruul energy signatures, likely a raiding party looking for technology and valuable cargo. "We need to evacuate survivors," Helen said, studying the readouts. "But the raiders may still be aboard. Our security team is 5 people, none with military combat experience." Patterson spoke grimly. "The raiders will have at least a dozen armed fighters. If we send our people in, they will be slaughtered." A knock sounded on the door. Ash entered, followed by his siblings. All 3 wore serious expressions. "We volunteer," Ash said in his deep, carefully practiced voice. "We go with rescue team." Robert shook his head immediately. "Absolutely not. You are technically still minors under Scarine law, and your monitor bands report every action back to the Council. Combat would violate every term of your guardianship. People dying," Snow said softly. "Children scared. We can help." "You are not trained for combat situations," Patterson argued, though his tone was less hostile than it would have been 2 years ago. "And if something goes wrong, the political consequences will be severe." Frost stepped forward. "All life we are called weak, called useless, called defect. Please let us prove we are not. Let us show value." Lily had been silent, but now she spoke. "They are the strongest fighters we have. You know it, even if you do not want to admit it. Normal Scarine are already elite warriors, but Ash, Frost, and Snow have been training constantly for 2 years. They want to prove themselves. Give them the chance." Robert looked at his daughter, then at the 3 albinos who stood tall despite their nervousness. He thought about the children trapped on that dying ship. He thought about political complications and treaty violations and a dozen reasons to say no. Then he thought about what his daughter had taught him over the past 2 years. Sometimes the right choice was not the safe choice. "All right," he said, "but you follow orders from our security chief exactly. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. Your job is to help evacuate civilians, not hunt raiders." The rescue team assembled in the shuttle bay, 5 human security personnel plus the 3 albinos. They wore emergency pressure suits and carried basic weapons. The plan was simple: dock with the colony ship, reach the survivors in the safe zone, and evacuate them back to the shuttle before life support failed completely. But plans changed the moment they breached the damaged airlock. The Gruul had set an ambush. They were brutal creatures standing 8 feet tall with thick gray hide and savage weapons designed to cause maximum trauma. A dozen of them waited in the docking corridor, having detected the shuttle's approach. The first human through the door took a plasma bolt to the shoulder and went down screaming. The others tried to retreat, but they were pinned in the narrow corridor. The Gruul advanced slowly, enjoying their prey's fear. Then Frost charged past the humans with a roar that echoed through his helmet. He moved faster than the Gruul expected, his white scales making him appear as a ghost in their vision. He slammed into the nearest raider with enough force to crack armor, then spun and struck another with his reinforced tail. Ash came from the right side, using the corridor's damaged structure to climb along the wall and drop onto 2 Gruul from above. His claws found weak points in their armor with surgical precision. Snow moved with her brothers, pulling wounded humans to safety while somehow dodging incoming fire. The Gruul had been expecting frightened civilians or maybe undertrained security. They were not prepared for scurrying combat instincts combined with 2 years of disciplined training and desperate motivation. The ambush turned into chaos as the 3 albinos fought with coordinated precision. Frost held the main corridor alone against 8 opponents, his body taking hits that would have killed a human but merely scoring his scales. He fought with pure defensive focus, giving the humans time to reach cover. Ash disabled the Gruul weapon systems with a combination of brute strength and engineering knowledge, tearing apart power cells and crushing firing mechanisms. Snow, despite her smaller size, dragged 3 wounded humans to safety while dodging combat. Then she did something remarkable. She picked up a fallen raider's weapon, and using medical knowledge of Gruul anatomy, placed precise shots that disabled rather than killed. She neutralized 3 enemies without taking a single life. The battle lasted 7 brutal minutes. When the Gruul finally retreated, 4 of them lay unconscious and the rest fled deeper into the ship. None of the humans had been killed, though 2 were seriously wounded. The 3 albinos stood guard while the security team caught their breath. "Move," Ash ordered, his voice rough from exertion. "Mission not complete. Survivors need help." They pushed deeper into the dying ship. The albinos cleared each corridor, their superior senses detecting hidden threats. They found the survivor zone where 200 terrified colonists huddled in an emergency shelter. The life support was failing, oxygen dropping to dangerous levels. The evacuation took 3 hours, multiple trips back and forth to the shuttle. The albinos carried children and elderly passengers, moving smoothly despite their own exhaustion. They shielded civilians with their bodies when secondary explosions rocked the ship. They worked without rest until every single survivor was safely aboard rescue vessels. The last to leave was Snow, who had stayed behind with Dr. Willis to treat the most critically injured. She carried a human child no older than 5. The girl's face pressed against her white scales while Snow whispered reassurances in gentle English. When the shuttle finally pulled away from the doomed colony ship, Admiral Hayes was waiting. The military escort had arrived to find civilian vessels successfully completing a rescue that should have been impossible. The 3 Scarine albinos had done what an entire military unit would have struggled to accomplish. Hayes personally visited the Wayfinder to commend the rescue team. He stood before Ash, Frost, and Snow with genuine respect in his eyes. "I have commanded Scarine warriors before," he said. "I have never seen better. You 3 saved 200 lives today." The crew of the Wayfinder gathered to welcome them back. Even Patterson, his arm around one of the wounded security officers who the albinos had saved, nodded acknowledgement. The division that had fractured the ship 2 years ago finally healed as everyone recognized the truth. The 3 rejected hatchlings were not defects. They were heroes. That night, Lily found her friends in their quarters, carefully cleaning their scales and checking each other for injuries. They were exhausted but satisfied, the monitoring bands on their wrists blinking steadily with recorded data that would be analyzed by the Screen Council. "You were amazing," Lily said simply. "I am so proud of you." "We prove we not weak," Frost said, though pain edged his voice from untreated wounds. "We prove we have value." "You always had value," Lily reminded them. "Today you just made everyone else see it." But the rescue had consequences neither they nor Lily could predict. The footage of 3 albino Scureen saving hundreds of lives spread across communication networks. It reached human worlds and alien stations. And eventually, inevitably, it reached Theros, where Hatchery Master Vrel watched the videos with complicated emotions. In the facility's newest isolation cage, 2 small albino hatchlings huddled together, waiting for their scheduled disposal. And for the first time in his long career, Vrel wondered if he had been wrong about everything. 3 months after the colony ship rescue, the Wayfinder received a priority transmission from the Scureen homeworld. Hatchery Master Vrel appeared on the screen, his emerald scales showing signs of age that had not been visible during their first meeting. His voice carried a strange mixture of pride and desperation. "I request audience with the albino trio and their human guardian," he said formally. "A matter of urgent importance requires their presence on Theros." Robert Brooks was immediately suspicious. "The last time we dealt with your council, they nearly killed Ash, Frost, and Snow. Why should we trust you now?" Vrel's scales darkened with shame. "Because I was wrong. Because my people face extinction without their help. Please allow me to explain." The full situation emerged over the next hour. A genetic disorder was spreading through Scureen hatcheries across all colony worlds. The condition caused severe immune deficiency, and infant mortality had climbed to 40%. Scientists had studied the problem for months, searching for the source. They found it in the genetic sequences that govern scale pigmentation. The same genes that produce normal green and brown coloring were linked to immune system development. Over centuries of selective breeding that favored perfect coloration, the Scureen had accidentally weakened their species' genetic diversity. But albinos like Ash, Frost, and Snow possessed different genetic structures. Their immune systems developed through alternative pathways, making them naturally resistant to the disorder. The genes the Scureen had spent generations trying to eliminate might be the only thing that could save their species. "We need tissue samples and genetic mapping," Vrel explained, his voice strained. "We need to understand how their immune systems function differently, and we need them to help us locate other albinos who may have been hidden or abandoned over the years." Lily listened to the request with mixed emotions. Part of her wanted to refuse to make the Scureen suffer for their prejudice. But another part, the part that had spent years teaching compassion, knew that children were dying while adults argued about pride. "What do you 3 want to do?" she asked, turning to her friends. Ash, Frost, and Snow held a silent conversation with small movements and shared glances. Finally, Snow spoke for them all. "We go, we help." Not because they deserve it, but because hatchlings do not choose their parents' mistakes. The journey back to Theros took 3 weeks. The albinos spent the time preparing themselves emotionally for returning to a place that had rejected them. Lily worried about them constantly, knowing the psychological weight of facing their traumatic past. The orbital station had changed in small ways, but remained fundamentally the same. The breeding facility still hummed with activity, though the nursery halls were quieter now with fewer healthy hatchlings. They docked at the same port where Lily's family had first arrived years ago, back when 3 small white hatchlings were locked in an isolation cage. Vrel met them at the airlock. He had aged noticeably, stress and guilt wearing on him. He greeted the 3 albinos with proper Scureen formal respect, lowering his head in acknowledgement of their status. It was a gesture normally reserved for honored warriors and elders. "Welcome home," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "This was never home," Frost replied coldly. "Home is where we are wanted. This is just where we hatched." The research facility had been prepared for their arrival. Scureen geneticists worked alongside human medical specialists to conduct careful, non-invasive tests. They took tissue samples, mapped genetic sequences, and ran simulations. The albinos cooperated fully, though their monitor bands tracked their stress levels climbing steadily. The results confirmed what scientists hoped. The albino genetic structure included redundant immune pathways that could be isolated and potentially introduced into the general population through carefully managed breeding programs. It would take generations to fully repair the damage, but there was now hope where before there had been only despair. Counselor Sora, now the eldest member after several retirements, requested a private meeting with Ash, Frost, Snow, and Lily. They gathered in the same council chamber where Lily had undergone her trials years before. "You have given us a gift we do not deserve," Sora said quietly. "You owe us nothing, yet you came anyway. This is the definition of honor that we claim to value but rarely demonstrate." "We came for the children," Snow said simply. "They should not suffer for mistakes made before they hatched." Indeed, Sora's scales shifted in a pattern that indicated deep thought. Which brings me to a difficult request. While examining facility records, we discovered 2 albino hatchlings were born during this cycle. Under our old laws, they would have been disposed of already. But the administrator delayed, uncertain after witnessing your achievements. They remain in isolation, awaiting decision. Lily felt her heart clench. 2 more rejected hatchlings locked away and frightened, just like Ash, Frost, and Snow had been. She looked at her 3 friends and saw her own emotions reflected in their eyes. "We wish to see them," Ash said firmly. The isolation wing looked exactly as it had 3 years ago. The same harsh lighting, the same cold metal cages, the same atmosphere of neglect. In the corner cage, 2 small white hatchlings huddled together. They were even younger than Ash and his siblings had been, barely 2 months old. The baby albinos scrambled to the back of their cage when the group approached, making distressed chirping sounds. They had learned already that visitors meant nothing good. Lily felt tears sting her eyes at the familiar scene, but this time the visitors were different. Ash knelt down in front of the cage and spoke in gentle Scareen. "We are like you. White scales, red eyes. We were unwanted too. But we survived. We found family. You are not alone." The baby hatchlings stopped retreating. They stared at the 3 large albinos with wonder, seeing themselves reflected in these strong, confident adults. Snow made soft clicking sounds of comfort, while Frost carefully pushed a treat through the feeding slot. Lily understood what needed to happen before anyone said a word. She turned to Vrel, who had followed them to the isolation wing. "We will take them. Add them to our guardianship." Vrel nodded slowly. "I expected no less. The council has already prepared the paperwork. But I must ask, how will you manage 5 Scareen juveniles? The youngest 2 will need constant care." "We figure it out," Ash said firmly. "Like Lily's family figured out how to care for us. No one should grow up thinking they are broken. We teach them truth. They are perfect exactly as they are." The legal process took 2 days, during which Lily and the others visited the baby albinos constantly. They brought soft blankets, good food, and most importantly, attention and affection. The little ones slowly began to trust, especially when Snow stayed overnight in their cage to comfort them. On the 3rd day, Counselor Sora made an announcement that would change Scareen culture forever. She stood before the full council and declared the immediate end of all policies regarding albino hatchlings. No more isolation, no more disposal, no more treating genetic variation as defect. "The galaxy watched 3 albinos save 200 lives, Sora said, her voice carrying through every speaker in the facility. "They proved our prejudice wrong through action and honor. We will not make this mistake again. All hatchlings, regardless of scale color, will receive equal care and opportunity." The council voted unanimously. Vrel himself proposed they establish a new program to locate and rehabilitate any albinos who had been hidden or abandoned across Scareen territories. It would be called the Brooks Initiative, named after the human girl who taught a warrior species about compassion. Lily stood with Ash, Frost, and Snow as the announcement broadcast across Scareen worlds. The 2 baby albinos were in Snow's arms, content and safe. The 5 of them represented something that should have been impossible. Rejected creatures finding not just survival, but purpose. That evening, as they prepared to leave Theros for the last time, a small group gathered near the shuttle. Young Scareen, normal and albino together, came to see the heroes depart. One child, a little albino female barely 3 months old, approached Lily nervously. "Is true?" the child asked in halting English. "You chose to be friends with rejects?" Lily knelt down to the child's level and smiled. "I did not choose to be friends with rejects. I chose to see people that everyone else was too blind to notice." That is a big difference. The child's red eyes widened with understanding and hope. I see too? Yes, Lily said gently. You will see many things others miss. Your eyes work differently, so you notice things they cannot. That is not weakness. That is gift. The shuttle lifted off, carrying 7 passengers back to the Wayfinder. Lily sat between ash and snow, with Frost holding both babies carefully in his lap. They looked down at Theros shrinking below them, a world that had rejected them but could no longer define them. What will we name the little ones? Lily asked. The 3 albinos considered carefully. Hope, Snow said finally, indicating the female baby. And Light, Ash added, touching the male baby's small head. Because they live in a world we helped change. They will never know the darkness we knew. The Wayfinder's crew welcomed the 2 new additions with preparation and patience. They had learned much over the past 3 years about acceptance and growth. The babies cried often those first weeks, adjusting to strange surroundings. But they were never alone. They had 5 protective older siblings, a ship full of adoptive aunts and uncles, and 1 determined human girl who had proven that love could cross any boundary. Years later, long after Lily grew up and started her own work helping troubled youth across species, people would ask her about the famous albino Scareen who had changed their society. They wanted to know the secret of how she had achieved the impossible. Her answer was always the same and always simple. I asked for a friend. They said yes. Everything else followed from that one simple choice. And in universities, military academies, and hatcheries across 100 worlds, they taught the story of the cranky albino hatchlings who were rejected by everyone, until one human girl looked past their scales and saw their souls. It became a lesson about prejudice, compassion, and the courage to challenge traditions that cause harm. But for Lily and her family, the story was never about lessons or fame. It was about 7 beings who found each other in the darkness and chose to create light together. It was about proving that family has nothing to do with biology and everything to do with choice. And in the quiet moments aboard the Wayfinder, when the ship sailed through the stars and the crew slept peacefully, 5 Scareen and 1 human would gather together and remember that first meeting in an isolation cage. They would remember fear becoming trust, rejection becoming acceptance, and loneliness becoming love. They would remember that sometimes the most important thing you can do is see someone that the world has decided not to look at, and then simply beautifully refuse to look away.